to the 10 Washington Podcast.
My guest this week is a prominent Canadian sportscaster who has entertained TV viewers for more than 30 years at CTV News in Toronto. In addition, Joe Tilley is a Golden Gloves champion who won a bronze medal at the Canadian Championships. He's also fought other battles as well, specifically alcoholism, starting at an early age. Today, he's in recovery and has been for more than 30 years. And today, he helps those battling addiction through his work as a counselor, a public speaker, and the co-host of the podcast, Recovery Comes Alive. Mr. Tilley, it is a pleasure chatting with you. How are you? Good to see you.
Well, the pleasure is mine, Ted, and thank you. I'm doing great. It's beautiful here in Mexico, as it is pretty much every day. It's 29 or 30 degrees every day, so sun shining. It's good.
I wanted to ask you, how is it that you find yourself in Mexico? I mean, I have a lot of friends who winter, and they chose years ago to buy a piece of property in Florida, and now they're sitting there going like, oh, I got to go through all this. You know what I mean?
No, really, really happy to be in Mexico.
Yeah.
Given the political climate these days, no question.
Yeah.
No, it's, we first time we came down was about 7 years ago. We came down for 10 days, stayed with friends who were renting a condo for a couple of months. We stayed for 10 days, really liked it. And the following year, we were going to come down for 2 months, and COVID hit.
Yeah.
And so the following year, we stayed for 3 months. And then the next year, we stayed for 4 months. And then the last 3 years, we stayed for 6 months. And we rent a place on the golf course here in Nuevo Vallarta. The golf course is called El Tigre. And the weather's unbelievable every day from the time we're here in late October until the time we leave in late April is the same. It's Groundhog Day, 29 or 30 degrees, sun shining, and perfect weather. So we golf a lot.
Okay, you can stop rubbing it in.
Life is good, man. I tell you.
Well, I mean, for a kid who grew up in Alberta, don't you miss the winters? Come on, Joe.
Not even a little bit.
No,
You know what? I had my fair share of winters already. In my lifetime, I've had my fair share of winters growing up in Edmonton, and I've had my fair share of drinking, being carried away with that problem for many years.
Yeah.
I don't have to do either of those anymore, winter or alcohol. So I'm good.
But we will talk about all of those things. But let's go back to Edmonton, or as my cousin who lives there, he calls it the Big Pierogi.
Big Pierogi.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
How long were you in Edmonton before you made your way out, at least, or how long were you in Alberta at least before you made your way?
Born and raised in Northwest Edmonton, and lived there until I was 24, and then I got a job in Red Deer coming out of university. Just after I graduated, I got a job at CKRD in Red Deer. And interestingly enough, Ron McLean was the afternoon drive shift guy on radio, and he did the weather on TV. And my first job was doing afternoon and evening newscasts on the radio, and then a sportscast on TV at 11:30. So that was my first gig.
And news, and people think, well, nowadays it's so much different on radio. Nowadays, you do the news and you do the sports following that.
Right.
Back years ago, it used to be there was a dedicated person who did just sports because they were sports people. They knew, and they ate and drank and slept sports, right?
Right.
And
in the beginning, no.
While you were doing the news, did you always have this desire to just do the sports, or just
100%.
Yeah.
We had, the old ticker tape news wires.
Yeah.
They would do a summary every hour, a new summary on the ticker tape, and I just rip and read the summary. And the whole night I spent typing up my sportscast and trying to perfect that, right? Because that's all I really cared about. News that had no interest for me, but yeah. So I worked on the sportscast the entire night, and then at 11:30 did my sports, and that was it. That one.
And when did sports become a full-time thing for you and news part of your history?
I spent about just over a year in 15 months in Red Deer at CKRD doing the weather news and sports. And then I sent actually a guy called me from, his name is Derek Bolt. He was a news director at CFCN Lethbridge. And he said, I've seen your stuff. I think you're pretty good. We have an opening for a sports director and
Wow.
here in Lethbridge. And I said, I'm in. And so I moved to Lethbridge with my wife and our young son, and away we went to Lethbridge and loved it, loved it. So now it's entirely sports. You know, I'm
Yeah.
reporting and I'm, doing a weekly sports show on the weekends. We called it Sports Beat after Pat Marsden's show.
Mhm.
And we did that. And we used to get a lot of our video from Toronto. So, and CFRN in Edmonton and CFRN in Calgary. So we put a half-hour weekly show together. Plus I anchored the 6 o'clock new sportscast. And then I went out and did Lethbridge Broncos hockey games, Lethbridge Dodgers baseball
I was going to
games.
say, what were the
Yeah.
sports teams and
Yeah.
how involved were you with them?
For sure. And I'd cover everything. The Lethbridge Pronghorns hockey, Lethbridge
Pronghorns?
Pronghorns, that's University of Lethbridge.
What is a
yeah.
pronghorn?
Okay.
We're making
Well,
this up.
it's like an antelope, right? It's
I
a
don't know.
pronghorn.
I'm asking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's like an antelope. It's got a horn, horn out the.
Yeah. So now, in the meantime, while all this is going on, are you boxing? When did you start boxing?
Got it. So boxing was I have to go way back for that. I started boxing when I was 19 years old. I was really lacking direction in my life. I dropped out of high school. I didn't know what to do with myself, and teenage alcoholic and a lot of trouble. And I just realized it was, if I didn't do something with my life to change my life, I was going to die. I really was. And so I went down to the local boxing gym. Native Friendship Center had an incredible boxing program. So I joined the Native Boys Boxing Club and I started training basically like a fiend every day. I would go to the gym in the mornings, do some work out there. Then come back home, do some road work, and then go back at night and spar and work the pads with the coaches and hit bags and stuff like that. And I trained like a professional from the time I was 19 until I had my last fight when I was 24.
And you were a welterweight.
Yeah, I was welterweight.
And what is the weight of welterweight? And tell me in pounds and let everybody else.
167 kilos. Yeah, that's what I fought at. So when you start out, you fight in what's called novice, the novice division. So I was a senior open novice, or senior novice, 19 years old, soon to turn 20. So I had the first number of fights as a novice, which you're fighting 2-minute rounds. I was winning my fights because, like I mentioned, I was training like a pro, and I went to the provincials, won the novice championship, and then I got to travel with the Alberta team. They took me to Las Vegas. They took us to Ireland. They took us all over the place. And of course, I was 9-0. I won the provincial championship in novice and got named best novice at the provincials and all that stuff. And then they joined the traveling team with the Alberta team and got a chance to rack up a lot of fights, travel all over the place. And so then the following year, I was senior open, and I won the provincial championship again. And then went to the nationals. I won a bronze medal at 78 nationals, and things were cooking along. When we were in Ireland, by the way, I knocked out the Irish champ in Belfast, and that was quite a rush.
Sure, that went over well.
Yeah. It was not with them, but it was good for me.
Yeah. Did it ever come in your ability to box? Did it ever come in handy, or did it ever provoke you? Especially when you were drinking to kind of get into fights?
I got in a few fights, tussles here and there. And, I didn't really look for it too much. I really didn't. I realized that if there was a problem, I could take care of myself. And I never pushed that envelope too much. I mean, there's a couple of guys that one guy used to bully me and I took care of him. And another guy who I had some sort of a rivalry with, one day I ran into him and we had had it out and that's, but not very often. The guy who used to bully me, he was pretty relentless. And I gave him every opportunity. I said, buddy, he was calling me a specific name that really bothered me for whatever reason, but it did. He called me Pack Rat. So we're in a Boston Pizza and 100. And here he is. I haven't seen him in probably 3 years. And I hear this, "Hey, pack rat." And at the time, I'm talking to two girls at this table and having a conversation. I looked over at him. I said, "Don't call me that." And he said, "Okay, pack rat." And I walked over and I said, "Don't call me that." And he got up and I said, "Bang." And I hit him 2 or 3 times and they carried him out of there. And I never had a problem with him again.
Yeah.
And
I guess. God, I wish I'd known this when I met you years ago.
but it was just one of those things. But I really didn't go looking for it. Never have.
No. Now it could if somebody said if like for charity, could you get into the ring right now and just go a
I
couple of
think I
rounds?
could, because
Yeah.
I have over the last number of years, I have kept myself in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
I went to this gym in Stouffville when we had the trailer there, and I will still have the trailer, but I when I'm back in Canada, I was going to the gym regularly. They have a heavy bag there, and I hit the heavy bag and go 3 or 4 rounds in a heavy bag. So I still do that once in a while. Here, there's not a heavy bag here at the resort where I'm at. But I do a little shadow boxing once in a while in the steam room and when nobody's around. So
Yeah.
I think it'd be a little awkward if somebody was there, so I don't do that. So
Yeah.
I wait till I'm by myself.
What was it that brought you, or who was it that brought you out of Alberta into Ontario?
Okay, so I was working in Lethbridge and I loved it. They were paying me good money for that type of job. I was a sports director and I had my own weekly sports show, as I mentioned, and plus I did a nightly sports cast,
Yeah.
doing lots of reporting, learning a lot about the business. I even put together a documentary on the Lethbridge judo team going for gold, and they had all these great judokans in Lethbridge for whatever reason, and so I put that together. And I'd been in Lethbridge for 9 months, and I just for shits and giggles, I decided to send a tape to Pat Marsden, and more or less to get his, maybe get some direction from him. Like, here I am in Lethbridge, kind of put myself out there. Any ideas of where I would, you know, try to apply to next? What would be a good, sort of stepping stone for me? And he got the tape, and the next day, Fergie Oliver quit after 22 years. Fergie was doing Blue Jays baseball and, his just like mom and a few other things he had on the go. So he didn't really need to do his 11 or 30 sports anymore. And so that job became open, and Pat had just seen my tape, and he called me up and said, "Hey, got your tape. What would you think about coming to Toronto to work?" And I said, "Okay, that's great. I can do that."
Yeah.
So when I was working in Lethbridge and Red Deer before that, see, my real last name is Tilley. A lot of people don't know that. And my real first name is Clarence. I'm Clarence Joseph Tilley. I was going by, I used to go by CJ. I boxed the CJ. I did a lot of things as CJ, but my news director in Red Deer said, "Go with your real name, Clarence." And I said, "Okay, whatever." For the job, I did Clarence. And then in Lethbridge, I was Clarence, and I sent the tape to him as Clarence. And we met the bosses at, Douglas Bassett and Ted Delaney.
Yeah.
We had the interview, and Pat said to me, he says, "What's your middle name?" And I said, "Joseph." And he says, "What do you think of calling yourself Joe Tilley?" And I said, "Well, for me, it's coming to Toronto. You can call me shithead. I don't care. I'll take that." And so that was it. So they changed my name, and I was fine with that. And of course, I've been Joe Tilley ever since. Even all my siblings, all my family, everybody calls me Joe.
Yeah.
Uh, that's how I became Joe.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
You're the first Clarence I've ever met.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I
have
knew
to tell
one back back in Edmonton, Clarence. But my dad was a Clarence. That's how. That's
Pat Marsden, for people who are not familiar with Pat Marsden, if we're listening out of the market, outside of the country, but Pat Marsden was one of the most colorful sportscaster figures. I think in a long time, maybe in the history of sports on television. I mean, Dick Meadows was one of them as well, but Marsden was
yeah.
he was a pretty wild guy.
He was. There are
Yeah.
many, many good Marsden stories. Yeah.
Everybody's got a great Marsden story. That's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, he just literally, if you knew him at all, you got a Marsden story.
Right.
But he was right into his work. Like he knew sports. I mean, it
Oh,
was,
for
you
sure.
know.
He
I
was
mean,
he was a real pro. I mean, Pat would. if he had to, he would just ad lib his 5 minute sportscast, and that's it. And a lot of times it totally threw directors off and everything else because he all of a sudden he start talking about the Jays, and is this where I'm supposed to roll the video or and it's then he'd talk about the Leafs again. He'd talk about Harold Ballard, and he'd just go off the cuff. And Pat used to like to imbibe, as you know, and there are many stories about Pat being at a function and being basically passed out, and people waking him up and say, "Pat, I'll call Fergie to go to work for you." And God, screw that! I'm going to work, and he'd go in and do the sportscast and flawlessly. Even though he'd be 2 hours earlier, he'd been
Yeah.
out of it. So
Harold, you mentioned Harold Ballard.
Mm.
Everybody who's worked in sports during the Ballard era has. There's another guy too. If you met Harold Ballard, you got a Harold Ballard story. You got a Harold Ballard story.
Yeah, yeah. We have that. Well, Harold Ballard was. Everybody at CFTO had a hard time with Harold Ballard. Had a hard time with everybody who worked at the station because generally we didn't pull punches. And there's one time where I called him. I referred to him as Cro-Magnon Man. Stone Age man, and pretty sure he didn't have a clue what that was. But the next day, I'm getting calls about I'm not allowed to back into Maple Leaf Gardens anymore, and he had called Bassett and asked to have me fired. And I know that Bassett said, "Harold, go screw yourself. Our guys are our guys, and they're going to say what they're going to say." And because he did a lot of really stupid things, like when he after the made that reference to the Russian plane that had been shot down, or the Russians had shot down the plane at Maple. I mean, he did a lot of crazy stuff that was just off the wall and insane. And of course, he spent many years ruining a hockey team. So and the franchise.
Does he remind you of someone who's now prominent in politics?
Yeah, kind of 100%.
Yeah.
Like how does a person like that get into that position?
Yeah.
Just everything aligned, the perfect storm, and here we are, right?
Well, I guess one of the most difficult things if you're a kid growing up and you're a sports fan and you become a sportscaster is you meet these people. And I've
Mhm.
had this conversation with a number of people in the industry over the years, is that one of the great thing is that you get to meet your heroes when you're growing up. Yet by the same token, one of the worst things can be is meeting somebody who you grew up with who is a hero, and you meet him and you think this guy's a dick.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I had a few of those, but a few of then you get guys like, Frank Mahovlich or Johnny Bauer.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I mean, you get the guys who are like unbelievable, like way more than you could ever even imagine. Like I met so many good guys, and I love Wendell. I like a lot of the guys who Russ Courtnall. I had him on my show, and I used to Gary Lehman. I still get along with Gary and all those guys, and um meeting those guys they a lot of them were really good, really down to earth and great guys. But there were the assholes, like I remember, for example, 1985, the Jays were playing the Royals in the American League Championship Series, and I was by the Royals bench, and I'm waiting to get a clip with George Brett, who had been just doing a number on the Jays in that series. So George is in the dugout, and I'm waiting for him, and I say, "Hey, George, can I grab you for a quick clip?" And he walks right by me, doesn't even look at me. I said, just like 2 minutes of your time, George. That's all I need. I just doing a piece for for television here in Toronto, and he didn't say a word. Walked right on the field, and
Yeah.
so and like such an absolute jerk. And a lot of people like Brett, but a lot of people didn't have the same experience with him that I did.
But you can't imagine a Frank Mahovlich or a Jean Beliveau or a
Mm.
Gordie Howe or a Johnny Bauer doing that back then.
No, never, never, never. Well, hockey players have always been the best. I mean, I always say that. I mean, I'm a little bit partial to the hockey players being Canadian and the fact that most of them are. But generally, every hockey player seems to give you the time of day. Almost every hockey player. I mean, there are the occasional jerks, but hockey players have been really good.
The people that you interview on your podcast now,
Mm-hmm.
the younger generation, and you interview some people from the past generation at all. Can you compare the two generations? 'Cause, I mean, you get an average hockey player now is pulling down a million, couple of million a year. Johnny Barber never made more than what is the equivalent today of maybe $500,000, right?
Right,
And do you
right.
wonder how much of that has affected the way they are? Like
Oh, well,
Would Johnny Barber have been different if he made the equivalent of 5 million or $6 million or had
I don't think
access?
so.
No, I don't think so
I
either.
don't think so because, they were sports heroes treated like sports heroes. And it's the same kind of thing today. It's just today they're people are more sheltered. They have psychologists, they have people that take care of their finances for them. They have people that tell them what they can and can't say, and
Hmm.
it's so rigid. Yeah, it's a different type of world. You don't get many players that will really tell you what's on their mind. And back in the day, I guess you would occasionally, but people protected the players then too. Like if Johnny Bauer had said something to Pat Marsden in 1972 that was kind of like controversial, it could have been that Marsden might have thrown it by John Bassett Sr. before he used it on the air. You know what I mean? Right? Not that anything like that ever happened with Johnny, but
No, 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 no.
certainly not. But I mean, it was a different world, and I think that there was a transitionary period where that I mean, no, and they shouldn't be anyway. I mean, you are a public figure, and you're exposed to whatever you're exposed to, and I mean, it's gone the other way now, where a lot of people are looking for a gotcha, right? They're looking for a gotcha,
Yeah.
and so it's a different kind of world. But I more recently though, Ted, I don't know if you noticed that this or not with regard to my podcast. I've gone undergone a sort of a transitionary phase in terms of my podcast. I'm really focusing on mental wellness recovery
Yeah.
and addiction recovery,
Yeah. Well,
and
I wanted to
so
talk about that as well. But yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
But I've had like 6 years of talking to athletes, retired athletes, former greats, and it's awesome because I get to pick and choose who I talk to. I've had a chance to Russ Jackson, you know, Chuck Ely, um, Frank Mahovlich, Yvonne Cornway, Larry Robinson. I've had, Donovan Bailey, Lennox Lewis, and Jerry Cooney, and I've had all kinds of guys who I really, really wanted to meet and talk to, and have them on the show, and that's been a lot of fun, and having those guys on. I decided that recently I would like to have more of um, an opportunity to help people if I can use my experience in recovery from addiction in particular to leave that kind of a legacy, and that's been what's happened more recently.
I didn't realize, and I've known you for a long time. Seems I've known everybody for a long time. Maybe that's
Yeah,
because we're old
yeah,
now. I don't know, but there you go. I never realized that you battled alcoholism. I didn't know that you
yeah.
fought that battle.
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, we used to party pretty hard, and there was a time when I was, I used to function and still do my stuff and still be able to have the family, but to get to a point where I couldn't have that anymore. I ended up living on my in a one bedroom basement apartment with a friend that I worked with, and sleeping on his love seat, blowing my life up, and having lost my wife and three kids, my life was in a real mess. And
Your
yeah,
wife offered you an alternative, did she not?
yeah, she did. She started to find her own recovery journey, and she said, this family's going to go along with or without you, and in order to live here, you're going to have to live sober. And I couldn't do that. So I had to leave. And so ended up getting to that place where I was ready to do anything to try to, you know, do something about my problem. And I ended up going away to treatment, and I ended up getting a chance to come back home. And so I'm really blessed because a lot of people in my position don't get that opportunity.
No.
And yeah, don't find recovery and don't get a chance to get their family back.
What steps did you take to find that recovery? Did you go the traditional sort of
Yeah, I went
12,
the traditional
12?
route, 12-step recovery, and I was introduced to that in treatment, and I locked onto it. I saw people were getting sober and staying sober, by doing this work. And so by the time I left the treatment center, I was willing to do whatever it took. And so I did what they told me to do. I got a group, I got a sponsor, I worked the steps, and my life changed. And it has changed for the better really ever since.
While you were going through all this, you lost your son, and
Yeah.
I can't, for the life of me, imagine what that would be like, and I'm sure that most people can't.
No, so there's addiction runs in our family, and there's a lot of sobriety in my family, and there's also some recovery and some. Mike Spencer, my youngest son Spencer, I was actually 22 years sober when we lost Spencer, but he went to treatment and he went to an aftercare program, and he's sober for a period of time. So one of the centers that he went to for an aftercare program, I remember talking to him, and we were talking about what he wanted to do with his life, and he told me that he thought he'd like to be an addictions counselor, and he'd like to work with other addicts and alcoholics. And I said, "Oh, Spencer, you'd be an awesome counselor." And then we in on October 8th, 2014, Spencer had lost a job because he been using, and they did drug testing. He's working out west, and then he came back to Eastern Canada. He was spending time with his girlfriend in Niagara Falls at that particular time, and they had broken up, but I guess he was patching stuff. I don't know what was going on, but maybe making amends. I don't know I have no idea what's going on. But what I do know is that he took something with fentanyl in it, and we got the call that October 24th, he was gone. It was devastating, for us as a family. We really hung together and really close. We were really tight and really, and extended. My siblings and all came out, and in the recovery program, we got a lot of support, and just I've had a lot of mentors in the program who have helped me a great deal and who I turned to. I had a guy who I worked with who had lost his son, and there's lots of support that we reached out to. And there's bereaved families of Durham region were really helpful in the beginning. And we continue to, be part of that. I've just, I every month there's two different treatment centers that I go to, and I share my story and I share Spencer's story. So he gets an opportunity to be helpful to other addicts and alcoholics who are suffering. And when I share his story, it always hits home with a lot of people. And there are so many people that have lost people as a result of fentanyl and other drugs.
Yeah.
Uh, you don't have to look too far to find them. When I share Spencer's story and my own story, I really feel that I get an opportunity to be helpful.
And
Thus, it's the new show, right?
Spencer kept a journal, and
Yeah.
did that journal help you better understand the battle that he went through?
Yeah, he did. He was in the military and he was having some real struggles while he was there. And I actually shared Spencer's story at one of the luncheons in Ottawa with a lot of military leaders there. And I expressed the necessity to not treat his disease like a criminal. He was treated like a criminal. He was sent to a military prison 3 times, and the way to deal with that type of problem is to send them to treatment and to send them to it's not like people don't choose to be addicts and alcoholics.
No.
It's something that it's a disease, and it's you think people would choose to live on the street. The people would choose to put themselves in that position to harm themselves to that degree. We just don't do that. We just don't know of any way out. The disease lies to us and makes us think that somehow going to work this out and figure it out, but we can't do it on our own. We just can't.
You think
But
about
there's ways to get out of it,
how
right?
long it's taken for society in general to look at mental illness as a disease. It's not something that you've done wrong. For the longest time, if you had someone in your family who was suffering depression or severe anxiety, you would hide that. You wouldn't tell anybody about that because there was a sense of embarrassment about it. It's as though someone had done something wrong, or it's as though I have done something wrong because I'm depressed. Like, boy, I screwed up. I'm depressed. And it's hard for
Yeah,
people to understand that it's not, you can't point fingers. It's like saying to somebody, what the hell did you do? Go out and get cancer for? Why would you do
yeah,
that?
exactly, exactly. 100%. That's the point I was going to make. It's like we don't go and try to be this, you know, but try to have this disease. We don't want to have this disease. Nobody wants to be depressed, and nobody wants to be, lost in their addiction and homeless and helpless and hopeless. Nobody wants to be that. But that's where the disease leaves you. That's where we need to understand as a society that the best that can do is like some people probably would benefit from forced treatment, I believe. Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of maybe a controversial subject, but I think some people just don't understand that the liar is so strong in your head that you just believe that soon, eventually, I'm just going to work this thing out. Today is the day I'm going to quit. I would say that, and on my way home from work, I couldn't make it past the bar, and I just couldn't. I mean, I would have passed a lie detector test that I was going straight,
Yeah.
and I just couldn't. And it's like, but that's what the disease does to us. And so, um, if society understands that it's not a moral failing, it's not a choice,
No.
it's a disease of no choice. We have no choice, and we're lost until we're not. I mean, there is a way out, but it's going to take separation from, for maybe the longer the better. And the more we can, more we can do, the longer the stays we can have. I mean, to me, that's where our focus should be on treatment for all different aspects of mental health, mental wellness. That's where I think that's where you know our smart money goes, because it would save us ultimately so much more money down the road, and the money we spend on hospitals and you know ambulances.
Yeah.
Ted Woloshyn returns in a moment.
I've had the great fortune to say that I've been associated with one of Toronto's finest names in men's clothing for more than 25 years. Tom's Place. Founded by Tom Mahalick's father in 1958, Tom's Place offers brand name men's apparel at unbeatable prices. But more than that, they boast a long-serving, knowledgeable, and friendly staff that can assist you whether you're looking for casual or formal attire. And they have plenty of first-class tailors on site. In addition, Tom and his family are well known for their philanthropic work. So if you're looking to deal with great people who can fulfill your clothing desires at outstanding prices, do yourself a favor and visit Tom's Place. They're open weekdays from 11 to 6, Saturdays 10 to 5, and Sundays noon to 5. You'll find Tom's Place at 190 Baldwin in the heart of Kensington Market. Or check them out online at toms-place.com. Tom's Place will suit you.
Now back to Ted Woloshyn.
When you came to a point in your life where you realized, okay, I mean, I realized that the concept is that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Even if you stop drinking, you're still an
Mhm.
alcoholic. But I guess there must come a point, or tell me if I'm wrong. Does there come a point in your life where you say to yourself, okay, well, I am still an alcoholic, but I've gotten to the point where I think I've recovered. I think I've got like a real balanced life and I'm moving forward. And if so, when you do come to that point, do you then have to make a conscious decision of, do I just keep this information and this life, this past of mine to myself, or do I use it to help other people? You clearly have used it to help other people. Not everybody does.
Well, there's a saying in the rooms of recovery that you got to give it away to keep it, and I believe that you actually have to give it away to get it. I think in order to get to truly feel free and to have to be able to live in your own skin, to live my own skin, to be comfortable with who I am and what I am, I have to give it away, and I want to give it away. And there's nothing more that I can do to be helpful to myself than to try to give it away, to continuously do that. It's like, I have this cup here is full as long as I keep giving it away, it's always going to be full. I'm always going to have what I need, right? As I'm giving away, it keeps filling up. Giving away, it keeps filling up. But if I try to hold it to myself and drink it all on myself, it's going to be empty, and that's it. And I think that um, it's something that it's kind of like you come to the rooms, you come to the program until you want to come, and then you continue because you want to come and you want to stay.
Right.
And there's so much benefit. My life is, I feel so incredibly blessed in so many ways, but directly as a result of doing what I do. And why would I want to stop that? You know, because I know a lot of guys who stopped going. I've worked with a lot of guys who at some point stopped going and picked up again, and it never gets better, but it does get a lot worse. And I have a lot of friends who would vouch for that. And it's like I wouldn't want to play that game, that Russian roulette game, right? I mean, sure, maybe I've got enough recovery in the bank now that I could go for just take care of Joe for 2 or 3, 4 years. Who knows? Maybe I could do that. But at some point, I got a little bit of a sick mind, right? And if I'm left to my own thinking, I'm going to probably continue to be a little bit sick. And the more I'm left by myself to think, the more sick I'm going to get. I don't know. I believe it was Einstein, who's maybe Pascal, but somebody said, how can I fix the same sick mind with the same mind that created the sickness?
Right.
How am I going to think myself into wellness when I've got a sick brain? It just can't happen. So I need constant outside cleansing, if you will, brainwashing, literally, well, almost literally. I need to have that I need to think in a different way that I would be thinking left to my own devices. Because I on my own, eventually I get some stinking crazy thinking.
When did you start speaking publicly about your illness, and when did you become an advocate and start to speak to groups and people and
Man,
students, etc.?
probably a year into sobriety, maybe even less than that. I was speaking at schools. I stopped doing it for a while because I was speaking at schools, where my kids were going, and
Yeah.
I said to them, I'm going to this school, and my kids said, you know what, Dad, no, we don't want you to do that. So I
Yeah.
honored that. So I stopped speaking in schools per se, but I still spoke in front of like nursing groups or, a mental health association. I spoke at different events and different public events, and I do a lot of speaking within the rooms. I do a lot of sharing of my story and at treatment centers and other places, and so I do that a lot, and I have done that for the last 33 plus years.
And how long did it take you before you could speak publicly about the loss of your son? And I don't mean publicly about in terms of
Yeah,
talking to
I
friends.
think
I'm talking to
probably it was probably maybe a year after that. I went and spoke at that luncheon in Ottawa, and I wanted to share his story because I felt there was a real misunderstanding, and I realized that when I was there too, by one of the comments from one of the generals there, that he didn't get it.
yeah,
He still thought that if you beat sense into these guys, they will stop.
yeah. Well,
But you can't beat. I don't care what you do to me. I can't stop unless I'm separated from the drugs or alcohol, and then I am, introduced to treatment and start to work the steps and change my life. I can't stop it. I can't. It's a runaway train, and I can't stop. And no matter how many times you send me to, military prison or whatever, my son went there 3 times, and he was not going to get it that way.
no.
You can't. It's just like, I mean, look at the people who are living
Well,
on the street. You
again,
think they want to be there?
well, that's what,
Gee,
again, they were treating his problem as a fault.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
You're being punished
A
for
choice.
yeah, exactly.
You're making a choice, and you're not making a choice. You have no choice.
And how did the podcast with Jay Hill, your recovery comes alive? How did that come to be, and when did that come
Well,
to be?
I just probably, I don't know, a couple months ago, I came to the realization that some of the shows that I've done, with the former athletes or current athletes in some cases. But a lot of the shows that I really enjoyed doing were the ones where I got guys on there who'd recovered from, I had Ron Ellis, the late Ron Ellis on. He was the very first show I ever did, and he talked about his battle with depression and mental illness, and then I had other guys on there like Cooney, and I had Reggie Leach, and I had a lot of Jim McKinney, and a lot of different guys on there talking about their sobriety journey. Paul Martin, a lot of different guys, and that was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed that because I could really relate in a lot of different ways, and I thought I think this is probably where now that I've done this sports show for a long time, I think I'd like to sort of shift gears here and transition into just talking about mental wellness and talking about recovery. I've known Jay for a long time, and I've seen Jay come in, I've seen Jay go out, I've seen Jay come back in and catch fire from living on the street to become the CEO of Hope Valley Wellness and the journey that he's had. He would have thought to myself, if I want to have a co-host, who would it be? And I, give it some time. And when I thought about Jay, I thought, yeah, he's the guy.
So tell us more about Hope Valley.
Yeah. So Hope Valley, it's near Lindsay, and what they do is they have 30, 60, 90, they have, shorter term and long term treatment, and they bring every aspect of they have yoga, they have equine therapy, they have psychiatrists, psychologists, and doctors if you need it, and everything. It's like Addiction Rehab Toronto, same thing. I work. That's the place where I work. Once a month, I go in and share my story, and I do some stuff with them as well. But these treatment centers have a lot to offer an addict or alcoholic who's looking for recovery, and art and Alpha House. They have after programs, and they've got places. They have a great success rates with those that stay a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm.
There's some incredible recovery stories are generated on a daily basis from those places. And Jay had the dream about Hope Valley, and he presented his dream to some people who understood and helped him with the means to make it happen. And yeah, it's great.
Let me go back a little bit, Joe. When it sort of became public that you were battling alcoholism and that you had gone through all these battles and finally got to a point in your life where you had it together, where you are now, and you're out there speaking, people come up to you and how surprised are they to find out the struggles that you encountered?
Well, I thought people are surprised, I think, but encouraged, I believe. And I've had a lot of people tell me, come to me after I've spoken in a public setting and saying, sometimes they'll say, yeah, I've got a friend who's got a real problem,
Yeah.
Joe.
Yeah.
What should he do? And I say, I can, hey, but just go to the rooms, go to treatment. I would recommend those things. But and in a lot of cases, there are families and friends who could use help too. And there's Al-Anon, there's adult children of alcoholics, there's other programs for families and friends of alcoholics and addicts. And there's help for everybody, because who doesn't know, or
No.
who doesn't have a family member? Our most recent show that we're putting out tomorrow is on sports betting, and we've got
Yeah.
a guest who lost everything from sports betting, yeah, but is now clean from that and back on his feet, and just but gets he tells his story, and there's a lot of there's a lot of addiction stories out there, and that a lot of lives that have been decimated, but there's a lot of great comeback stories, and that's what it's all about.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I was thinking the other day when you think about the history of advertising in sports,
Mm.
Molson They brought us hockey. They brought us the
Hmm.
Indy in
Hmm.
Toronto, right?
Hmm.
Players, remember the old Maple Leaf calendars, right? With
Yeah.
players, it was players cigarettes. It was the Demorier Open, Canadian Open for golf, and now you can't turn on a sports game
Right.
or a sports cast without seeing one of 100 different betting organizations. And I think to myself, what the hell are you guys doing?
Yeah. How is that better? How
How
is
is
that
that?
better? I
Like
did the
it
Rothmans Porsche Turbo Cup Series, right?
well,
And for
exactly.
CTV, and that was back in the day. But it's you can't watch a game, and they're talking about it between periods, and that graphic comes up. If the Leafs are up 3-2, if you bet, it's now
I know.
plus 200 for you to bet on the Bruins. If you think the Bruins can
It's
come back, and your phone right here, it's like, and the guest we had on there mentioned to me, I don't know, he might have even said this off camera. Um, there was he would get warnings, but well after the fact, after he's lost the 20 grand or whatever it is, then he would get the warning from FanDuel or whatever it is. And they'd say to him, "Hey, are you having a problem with this or something?" But it's like by then it's like, yeah, that would have been a nice email after the last 100.
well, what makes me crazy about the whole thing is like you've got a young audience first of all, and they're very very susceptible to all kinds of different images and things that are being thrown at them, and they immediately they get you got a generation that's growing up that's immediately equating sports with gambling because they're all
Mm-hmm.
because and it's like every arena's got a FanDuel or a whatever
Bet MGM bet whatever that. Yeah,
bet
yeah,
your ass
yeah,
go
yeah,
crazy,
yeah, 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 yeah,
and it's all out there. And then who's doing the commercials? They're athletes. Now they passed
yeah,
a law in
yeah,
Ontario where you cannot. So they've got
yeah,
cleverly worked it. So they've got athletes who are and a major hockey player who's doing a commercial.
yeah.
But it's one of these, think about what you're doing. Maybe you shouldn't do that. And I'm thinking, are
Right.
you really sending out a message? Is this guy really a spokesperson who is saying don't gamble? Not
Yeah.
really.
No, I mean,
And on top of that,
they always throw out the line, bet responsibly. Somehow that just puts a
well,
blanket over all that
bet
stuff I've
responsible.
just told you about betting and showing you the app and how to get on it. And,
Yeah.
and your kids are 17 or 18 years old and they're on your phone and they're on their phone and they're using your credit card and, the stuff that's going on. And there's been a 300% increase amongst young males since since the betting has been legalized, and that's probably on the low end.
Well, bet responsibly and drink
Yeah,
responsibly. It's the same
right.
thing with alcohol
Sure.
commercials
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well, and that's
Smoke
not
responsibly. Yeah.
yeah,
Shoot heroin
I would just
responsibly.
or shoot your gun responsibly, right? And on top of that, I mean, it's like you're now seeing gambling. I mean, it's always been in the background in professional sports. I mean, the Black Sox scandal from how many years ago, right? And now we're looking look what happened recently with college basketball, right? In these games and they're shaving points and
The
because you can
Raptor
because you
quarter.
can because you can bet on how many points one guy is going to get in a quarter. Well, if he knows that the bet is 15, some guy says to him, listen, once you've hit 10 points, sprain your ankle or pretend you sprain your ankle because I'm going to put about 150 grand on it and I'm going to give you
Right.
like 15 of that if you just
Right.
well, some guy who isn't making a lot of money, it's easy. And
Yeah.
and the sort of off camera sports, the ones that aren't focused on, like the small tennis tournaments. I'm not talking about the US Open or the Australian
Right.
Open or Wimbledon. The
Satellite
smaller
tournaments.
ones, yeah, those tournaments, it's easy to cheat on those. I mean, how easy it would be
Hmm.
to get some guy was playing in the AHL to
Right.
take a dive. It's got to be tough
Right.
to convince Connor David to take a dive because he's got enough money. He doesn't need to do that. But
Right.
you know,
And he doesn't want to mess with his legacy.
yeah,
Yeah, but those guys still do the occasional gambling commercial, but they have done it. Yeah, there's no way. I mean, I don't know the cat's out of the bag now. I don't know how they what they do with this, but I mean, they're going to have to spend a lot of money on treatment for gambling problems.
yeah,
They're going to have to down the road. I mean,
yeah.
they should be now because I know it's out there. I know there's a lot of people hurting, and gambling is an awful addiction. I mean, there are more suicides from gambling addiction than any other form of addiction, from what I understand. Like maybe not deaths, but actual suicides. People get themselves in a big bind, and it just doesn't seem like there's any way out. there is a way out, and there is help for all gamblers. It's just like there are for any other addicts. But when you're stuck in that mindset, you believe that there isn't, right? You believe there's no hope. There's always hope. There's
Yeah.
always a way out. But when you're in it, it's hard to see it.
Do you miss doing your gig at CFTO?
No, I don't. A few times I've thought about it. I wouldn't be coming to Mexico for 6 months. I wouldn't be,
No, of course
doing the
not.
things that I get to do. I love doing my show, and I love doing my sports show. I love doing my show with Jay, and that is very fulfilling and fun. And that's kind of all I would want to do. I mean, I don't think I would ever accept a regular gig like that. It would be too hard. It would get, cramp my style too much.
Well, it's got to be a great feeling knowing that what you do a show and you think, boy, I enjoyed doing that. And at the other end, there are people that you're actually helping.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're hoping. That's the idea, right?
Yeah, well, that's
That's
what I'm
the
saying. I mean, that's like a double positive whammy, as it were,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. I would like to have that, for a legacy, is that I was able to be helpful. Because at the end of the day, you know, I know there's a lot of people who put a lot of focus on making money,
Yeah,
being famous,
yeah.
and everything else. But at the end of the day, what legacy are you really leaving? And if I know that I've been able to help somebody, you know, and what's great about the recovery program is I've been able to help somebody, and I watched them help somebody, and
Yeah.
I've watched them help somebody, and I watched them help somebody, and I watched them help somebody, and it just grows and grows and grows, and that's being part of that solution is so much better than being part of the problem, because for many years I was just part of the problem.
I can imagine though that because you've been doing it so long now, speaking with people and to people, that you've had people come to you and say, I saw you speak. I took your words to heart. I did this. I did this. Now I've been clean for so much period of time. And I thank you for that. That's got to make you feel real special.
Well, it's great. It's great, but I was looking at like it's like I carry the message, but that's all I do. They've got to do the work,
I know
right?
that.
They've got to plug into that source that's greater than them in order for them to get it. And so it's that's where the power comes from. It doesn't come from me. I carry the message, but it's like I remember the first couple of guys that I worked with in recovery, and they weren't getting it. And I remember talking to my sponsor, and I said, "What's going on? I'm working. I'm doing everything I could do. I should have maybe stayed home that night and worked." No, there's nothing you can do. They get sober. That's between them and the power, right? If they don't get sober, that's between them and the power. You just keep carrying the message, because you know what's happening. You're staying sober. Okay.
Recovery comes alive weekly.
Yep. Weekly.
Available wherever you find fine podcasts, and
Fine
some bad
podcasts,
ones as
yeah.
well, by the way.
All kinds of crazy podcasts are on there. But yeah, recovery comes alive with Joe and Jay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
It's great stuff. I can't thank you enough. I was looking forward to chatting with you, and I'm glad that we got into this. I mean, it's got to be. I got to be honest with you. It's not an easy thing for me to talk about, because I feel like I'm reaching into you and asking you to pull out. I'm taking part of your personal life, and that's not an easy thing to do. And I'm not saying that my benefit or anything, but you're such an easy guy to chat with, and you're a good man.
Oh, thank you, Ted. You're a good man. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Please don't ever beat me up.
Don't call me one of those names. I don't know.
No, God, I'm gonna go take some kind of course where I can mentally erase those words from my head in case I ever run into you on a golf course, which I hope I do, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. Let's do it.
Joe, all the best to you, my friend.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
That's gonna do it for another week. Thanks to Paul Gadd, our executive producer, to Tom Mahalik and the folks at Tom's Place for their support. And the music comes to you from Bike Thieves. But don't forget to go online, and you can check out all our past podcasts at www.tedwallishin.ca. Leave your thoughts and your comments as well. And while you're there, While you're on your computer, fill out your organ and tissue donation cards. You could change or even save a life. In the meantime, have a great week.